There is one skill that separates men who have deep, lasting connection from men who keep wondering why their relationships feel hollow. It is not what most people expect. It is not communication. It is not confidence. It is not knowing the right words to say at the right moment. Those things matter, but they are downstream of something far more foundational. The single greatest skill a man can develop if he wants real connection is regulation. The ability to stay steady when emotion is present, not to suppress it, not to perform calm while internally combusting, but to genuinely remain grounded when the emotional temperature in a room begins to rise. Most men have never been taught this. In fact, most men have been taught the opposite. They were raised to push through, stay stoic, solve the problem, and move on. Emotion was treated as an obstacle, not information. And so when emotion shows up in their relationships, in their conversations, in their closest moments, the nervous system does exactly what it was trained to do. It treats emotion like a threat. Here is where the confusion starts. A man has a difficult conversation with his partner, his friend, or someone he cares about. It does not go well. He walks away thinking, I said the wrong thing. I need to be better at communicating. So he reads about communication, he learns about active listening, he practices using different language. And then the next difficult conversation happens, and it still falls apart. Not because his words were wrong, because the moment emotion entered the room, something shifted inside him. His chest tightened, his thoughts accelerated. Everything started to feel like an attack or an accusation or a problem that needed to be solved immediately. That internal shift is the real issue. The words were never the primary problem. The nervous system response was. When a man's system spikes in the presence of emotion, he is no longer operating from his full capacity. He is operating from survival. And survival mode does not produce connection. It produces defense, distance, or dominance. Survival mode in relationships does not always look dramatic. It does not always look like yelling or storming out of the room. Sometimes it looks like a man who suddenly becomes very logical in the middle of an emotional conversation. He starts listing facts. He starts problem solving. He starts explaining why the other person should not feel the way they feel. That is survival. Sometimes it looks like a man who goes completely quiet, not because he is thoughtfully processing, but because his system has shut down and he has no access to words. That is also survival. Sometimes it looks like a man who becomes subtly controlling. He tries to redirect the conversation. He changes the subject. He makes a joke to diffuse the tension. He does anything to get the emotional temperature back down to a level that feels manageable for him. All of these responses have one thing in common. They prioritize the man's internal comfort over the other person's experience. And the person on the other side of that conversation feels it. They may not be able to name it, but they feel it. And over time, they stop bringing things to him. They stop being vulnerable. The connection quietly erodes. A regulated man does not eliminate emotion from his experience. He does not become a robot. He does not detach from what is happening around him. What he does is develop the capacity to be with emotion without being consumed by it. He can sit in a difficult conversation and feel the discomfort without immediately needing to escape it. He can hear that someone is hurt without his system interpreting that hurt as a personal attack that requires a defense. He can stay present in the middle of tension without making the moment about his own internal experience. This is not passive. It is actually one of the most active and demanding things a man can do. It requires him to notice when his system is starting to spike. It requires him to have tools to bring himself back to a grounded state. It requires him to repeatedly choose presence over protection. And when he can do that, something remarkable happens in his relationships. The people around him begin to feel safe. Not because he is performing safety, but because he is genuinely providing it. His steadiness becomes the container that allows others to be honest, to be vulnerable, to actually connect. One of the most specific and important applications of regulation is the ability to hear impact without collapsing into shame. This is where many men struggle most. Someone tells them, "That thing you said hurt me," or, "When you do that, I feel invisible." And instead of being able to stay present with that person's experience, the man's system floods with shame. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about the other person's pain. It is about whether he is a good person or a bad one. He becomes defensive not because he does not care, but because the shame is unbearable. So he argues, he minimizes, he explains his intentions, he does anything to get out from under the weight of feeling like he has failed. A regulated man can hear that he caused impact without it destroying his sense of self. He can hold the truth that he hurt someone and still remain stable enough to stay in the conversation. He does not need to defend himself out of it. He does not need to collapse under it either. He can simply be with it, acknowledge it, and respond from a place of genuine care rather than self-protection. When a man develops real regulation, something else becomes possible: decentering. This is the ability to remove himself as the center of a moment that is not actually about him. When someone is sharing pain, decentering means recognizing that this moment belongs to them. His job is not to fix it, explain it, or make himself feel better about it. His job is to witness it. This sounds simple. It is not. Because the unregulated nervous system constantly pulls a man back to himself. How does this affect me? What does this mean about me? What am I supposed to do with this? Decentering requires enough internal stability to hold space for another person's experience without needing to insert his own. It is the difference between a man who listens to respond and a man who listens to understand. It is the difference between a conversation that leaves someone feeling heard and one that leaves them feeling more alone than before they started talking. Here is the hard truth. Every communication technique, every relationship framework, every piece of advice about vulnerability or emotional intelligence, all of it becomes nearly useless if a man cannot regulate. Because the moment a real emotional moment arrives, the nervous system takes over and everything he has learned goes out the window. He reverts. He defaults. He does what he has always done. This is not a character flaw. It is biology. The nervous system is faster than conscious thought, which means the only way to change the pattern is to work at the level of the nervous system itself, not just the mind, not just the words, the body, the breath, the physiological state. When a man does that work, when he genuinely builds the capacity to stay regulated under emotional pressure, everything else he learns actually lands. The communication skills become useful because he can access them when it matters. The vulnerability becomes possible because he is not terrified of what it will cost him. The connection becomes real because he is actually present for it. Regulation is not one skill among many. It is the foundation that all the other skills are built on. And without it, a man can learn everything and still feel like something is always just slightly out of reach.